find your passion, and by doing that, look around and different opportunities. Talk to entrepreneurs. They enjoy talking to aspiring entrepreneurs in groups or in other settings individually. If you have ideas, feel free to call an entrepreneur in an appropriate way, and look if they have time to look at something that you may have. That to me has been the most valuable, but I always looked at what makes this person successful in business and why.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Commerce, Coffee, and Community Podcast Entrepreneurs Edition. Today I'm joined by the one and only John Brink, philanthropist and CEO of the Brink Group. Thank you so much for joining me today, John.
Well, thank you, Brandon.
I'll get you to start off the podcast today by just telling us a little bit about your background, John, where you grew up, and what eventually brought you to Prince George.
Interesting. Again, thank you for being on your podcast. I grew up in Holland, and to put that into perspective, I was born in 1940 at the beginning of the Second World War, and I grew up in northeastern Holland. And the setting was kind of that my dad was drafted into the Dutch Army, and in early 1940. I was born in November 1940, so I didn't even know him. And then, obviously, there was a blitzkrieg in Holland, and very quickly was overran by the German army then. And the last time they saw my dad was in Rotterdam, just before it was bombed.
Wow.
And then for the next 5 years, we were in a war setting. And it's always something that I speak about it a lot, especially on November the 11th, when I have the opportunity. I talk to a lot of schools then about what does it mean, to the silence, the 2-minute silence, and what does it really mean? And it means how we should appreciate for all those that gave at everything, and in the freedom, how important it is to us, especially what's going on in Ukraine right now.
Right.
Then we were liberated by April the 12th, 1945, by the Canadians. And I still remember it very well because I was 5 years old, and obviously we had gone through an extremely difficult winter. The winter of 1945 was called the hunger winter. A lot of people died because of lack of food, and food was being withheld by the armies then. And it was a tough go. And then we were liberated April the 12th by the Canadian Army. As I said, I still remember it well because every morning we would get up. There was a little school behind us where they were stationed for about a month, a section of the Red Cross from the Canadian Army. And they fed us bread with cheese and butter, and the cheese and the butter was bigger than the bread. And we were there from dusk to dawn, and everybody was called Johnny, and we didn't speak the language, but we really did, and it made such an impression on me that from there on in, I always knew I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada.
That's wonderful. Yeah. That's wonderful. Now, before we, talk a bit about your entrepreneurial journey, tell us about the Brink Group. What is the Brink Group made up of, and how has that changed over the years?
So the Brink Group, to put it all into perspective, Brandon, in particular, is that, so when I came here in 1965, in July of 1965, the second part of my dream was to go to Canada. The second one, to build my own lumber mill. And so that's then when I left Holland, I wanted to start right from the bottom up. With $150, I left Schiphol and flew into Montreal, the train across Canada. And then when I was in Vancouver, I didn't speak the language, I didn't know a soul, and I didn't have any contacts, no family of any sort. And I had an opportunity to talk to somebody at the immigration service in Vancouver. It was a German fellow, and I could speak some German. I said to him what I was planning to do, build my own lumber mill. And where should I go? He said, Prince George. Prince George, 1965, was a boom town. They were building sawmills and in pulp mills, and I took the bus to, from Vancouver to Prince George was about 12 hours, I think, and. When I came off the bus, not all that far away from here, 2 blocks away from here, I had a suitcase, a couple of books, and one set of clothes, and I had $25.47. And that's how it all kind of started.
Wow.
So that kind of then brought me up to my background. I already was close to the lumber side because my dad managed a small lumber company in Holland, not his own. And then my grandfather was a master carpenter, and I was trained as a furniture maker. And so lumber to me was close. And then, I started here as a clean-up man and then a lumber pilot. And within a year and a half, not speaking the language, within a year and a half, I was a superintendent of a fairly major mill here. And that didn't go fast enough for me. And then I got an offer of buying part of a mill in 1/3 of a mill in Watson Lake, Yukon. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Watson Lake, Yukon.
Not too much, actually. No.
It's likely the coldest spot in Canada.
Oh.
Now, for a guy coming from Holland, where the climate is something like Victoria, I seen it there 62 below. And then I see it snowing in July, and then you're not sure if it is late or early. So it's not the easiest place in the world. But I was there for 5 years, managed the sawmill. Then I bought a motel, and and I was there for 5 years. And then I came back to Prince George, started over again, and then in 1975 started Brink Forest Products with $25,000 from the bank, and with about 3 employees, and it grew up from there. But what's unique about it is that obviously I didn't have the resources to buy a mill or buy timber rights, but I had to find a niche, a different product, and I had been exposed to lumber manufacturing in Holland already, and I found a process in where you take shorter pieces of lumber and glue them together. They call it finger jointing. And you make from short pieces longer pieces. That became part of my company, and then lumber remanufacturing. So taking lower grade lumber and cutting pieces out of it. And that started in 1975 with city employees now 47 years ago. And I would work as long as I could stay awake, drive forklift truck, fix the planer, do the banking, sell the lumber, buy the lumber. And now 47 years later, we Brink Forest Products and the rest of the group, we employ about 400 employees. And we have 3 silos in our business makeup. The one silo is lumber and lumber manufacturing. We have operations in Prince George, Vanderhoof, and Houston, ever always expanding. And then the other silo is logistics and warehousing, and we are the largest warehousing company in northern British Columbia, have about 350,000 square feet. Probably in the next 4 years, we will be up to 1 million square feet. We add about 150,000 square feet a year. And then the other silo is real estate, both residential, commercial, and industrial. Wow. And then we have another 6 or 8 companies beside that in different areas.
So with all that, you've grown from, humble beginnings in Prince George, you're working your way up the ladder, right? What is your main motivator day to day, to show up, to do all the jobs, to do all the banking and grow your business every day?
Yeah. So my foundation is, that is hanging on in my office at different places because everybody knows what it is. It says, in the middle of the lumber piece that they cut out for me, and there's a number 2547. That's the amount of money I had in my pocket when I came in 1965. And then the other one says attitude, passion, work ethic, but follows his success.
Right.
So what I always try to do, I avoid the negative. I don't want to be even close to it. And then in terms of a passion is so critically important to people as you look at jobs or career choices that you make. So I found my passion early, became good at it, and very much enjoy it. And then the other part is in terms of work ethic. I've always enjoyed going to work, being at work, and give it all that I got. And even now initially I started out probably working as long as I could possibly stay awake 7 days a week, building the company. And now, even now at 81, I probably still work about 60 hours a week.
Wow.
And then the other thing that I do is I usually get up around 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed.
Oh.
I always do. And then and the reason that I do, I do it quite properly because at one point I was in the Air Force as well, drafted for 2 years. And I always kind of look back and make sure that it's all done properly. And then one of the reasons that I do it is because it just gets the day started right. And then, and then in the evening, when I come home, usually around between 6, 7, and 8 o'clock, whatever is going on, then, and then when I go to bed, usually around 10 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock, then there you go into your bedroom, and there you have this beautiful made-up bed. So it kind of starts the day off right, and it gives me a good feeling when I come back home again and take a rest.
Exactly. I think that's great advice for our listeners, might help you start your day off a little better.
Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. So how has this work ethic translated to the core mission of Brink today? 47 years, after its founding.
Well, I believe the results are obvious, and and we still not there even today. I still believe that we will double the size of the company in the next 4 to 5 years, and and then and when I first started in 1975 with my $25,000 from the bank. And some of your listeners in particular may wonder, how can you start a lumber company with nothing and then with $25,000 from a bank? How did that all go? Well, it went this way. I was fairly knowledgeable about the industry. I had to find a niche. And I found a place that I could lease, and I prepared a business plan. And I was fairly particular about the business plan. In fact, we still have it today.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of my people look at the business plan and say, we're still doing the same today, more zeros, than we did in 1975. Yeah. I dropped it off at every single bank in town. And then I followed up with every single bank in town, and I went back there and then see what I could do. And then after a while, a number of them said, John, you're a good guy, but it'd be prefer if you didn't come back because we can't do it. And then I ended up with about 2 or 3 companies, and then I fine-tuned on them. Yeah. And then in particular, kind of updating my business plan, being realistic about it, and all I was looking for is $25,000, and then preparing a plan that showed that it could be done. I had the experience, and so after going back to, probably it was the Royal Bank at the end, that I went back probably 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, and I always remember it just like yesterday. Is that, again, I went into the bank. I had made some modifications with the loan officer, and he said, okay. And they had all these small offices and these small walls in between them. And he said, let me talk to the manager. Manager was John Weems. He's still around even today. He's getting up in age, obviously. But, so I was sitting there and then, kind of wondering, okay, what's going to happen? So it took him a while. And then I heard all the way 3 booths over, he said, give him the money, give him the money. And so that's where I had the money, and then that's what started Brink. And then in the first 3 months, I had used up my first $25,000, another $50,000 on top of it. And every time a car would go by there, I thought it would be the bank that would say, okay, John, the gig is over, give me the keys. Yeah. But they didn't. They stayed with me. And obviously from there on in, through all the ups and downs, the whole story is in the book, Against All Odds, and a very interesting story.
I'll end you off with a soft one here for about yourself. What's your favorite thing to do in Prince George?
My favorite thing to do in Prince George is interesting because I'm quite into the gym, and had been for a long time, and other than going to work, obviously, but that's one of the favorite things I like to do. I like to go to the gym. I just started again, actually, 2 days ago. Because of COVID, I was off for 2.5 years, but I'd been going to the gym for 10 years, and then I started competing. People say to me, well, have you ever thought about competing? So I did that in 2017 here locally, and then became on bodybuilding in my class, and came in second in bodybuilding, third in physique, which qualified me for the provincials. Again, did there, probably 200 people there at least, and all of them that were there belonged there. Again, in my group, bodybuilding came in third in physique, second in bodybuilding, which qualified me for the nationals and the Arnolds.
Wow.
So then obviously because of the COVID for 2 years, we were not doing much. I just started over again, and so now at 81, I'm training again, and I intend to compete again when I'm 82, and hopefully get back to the provincials, the nationals, and the Arnolds.
That's incredible. That is so incredible. I don't suppose you offer lessons. We've got the famous University 20, we call it, when we get into school. I could lose that for sure.
No.
That's great. We'll go from there into a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. And you mentioned something that a particular moment that really stuck out to me is the day that you arrived in Vancouver, with that $25 in your pocket. What was going through your mind at that moment? It seems like kind of like an immense amount of pressure that I'd never be able to understand. I just would love for you to share that with our audience.
So this was a dream to me that was real. I tried to go when I was 17, but my parents wouldn't let me. And then I was drafted into the Air Force for 2 years. And then I won when I was 24. And so as far as I was concerned, I want here to prove and show that I could do it, that I had it, and that I wanted to build my own lumber mill. And so that was my mission, and the journey to me was clear. What I would find, I was not sure, but I knew for sure I would only come back if I was successful or in the box. I was committed this was going to happen.
Yeah, no, that motivation is really incredible to think about, and it's kind of a do or die situation, right? In that moment, absolutely.
But failure was not an option,
yes,
yeah.
Definitely. Now, in your book, you mentioned, the Watson Lake situation where you had purchased that motel. And in entrepreneurship, of course, adversity is a huge factor in, having a positive outcome. So how were you able to sort of come back from that situation, and, come back from that really tough entrepreneurial moment and say, you know what, I'm not done. I'm not going to work for someone else. I'm still going to follow my dream.
Yeah. So what I did is obviously, the sawmill, there was a commitment of I would get 1/3 after 5 years. They were not as committed as I was, and then I had bought the motel. And the reason that I bought the motel is not because I wanted to have a motel, but it was undervalued, and I had to find a way of making money so I could buy a sawmill, right? Yeah. So anyway, so then with the motel, it was a bit more than I had imagined, and I kept it for about 5 years, and then things got very delicate, to work in there. And then my first daughter was born in 1972, and there was a cabaret in it too. And in 1 year I had two knives pulled on me and twice a gun, and I knew that I had to make a decision as to what I would do, and I gave it all away for $1, and I started over again, went back to Prince George, started again driving forklift truck. Very quickly was an cost account in one of the mills, and then very quickly a sales manager. And then in 1975, I started my own company, Brink Forest Products.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Just that ability to, come back from something and, walk away from an opportunity that in the long term is going to be bad for you, right? And maybe not the best environment for yourself or the family, right?
It doesn't come natural to me. I don't give up ever.
Right.
But in that particular situation, because our first daughter was born, and I knew I had to do this, so that's what I did.
Definitely. Now, as businesses grow, the opportunities for expansion kind of increase. You've got complementary businesses, you've got new business ventures for your current business. What's a good process that an entrepreneur can use to identify these opportunities and, shift capital and things like that in terms of expanding to new areas?
Yeah. So the key, in my opinion, Brandon, is first and foremost build credibility, right? So that, and then we talk to lenders all the time, and then create a business that, has a good record in terms of my operations, starting out from, very tough go. We went through a number of ups and downs, but we always stayed with it, and has steadily grown. From there, and then we came to the point of saying, okay, where do we go from here? I always say we, although I'm the sole owner of the company, I always talk about the company and me.
Yeah.
So then it became a question, where do we go from here? And obviously expanding on the lumber side was the right, and as you already know from your exposure to the forest industry, it can go through these cycles, very rapidly. And we had a number of them in the last 20 or so years. But in any event, in about 2003, I decided to buy an operation in Houston, Pleasant Valley Remanufacturers. And then on the basis of that, it was complementary to what we were doing.
Yeah.
So same thing, basically incorporating it into Brink, but being independent, but producing products that were complementary to what we were already doing. And then about 5-6 years ago, we bought another company, Vanderhoof Specialty Wood Products, and again, an operation quite similar to Brink, a bit smaller than that, but we have grown that company. And ever since that time, we probably have approached at least, I would say, 10 or 12 different companies that we wanted to acquire on the lumber side. And today, as we sit here and talk, we're still negotiating on 2 other transactions that likely will happen. That's on the lumber side.
Yeah.
On the warehousing side, and I always believed in northern British Columbia that it will become something much larger than we know here today.
Right.
I believe that it will probably be there will probably be 200,000 people here in 10-15 years from now, and gradually growing up to that, and that it will change the whole industry here as we know it, both on mining, in manufacturing, in the forest industry. So there's huge opportunity. The other part is that it is this transportation corridor from Asia to the Western United States, West Coast United States, and the rail lines, and in particular any products coming from Asia going to the East Coast, it saves about 4 days. So
right.
And so I believe all of that will grow in and around us. It will add manufacturing. The other part is the road system, and the rail system is such that we are a natural center for not only for British Columbia, but for North America in terms of access to other transport in and out of Canada.
Right, absolutely. So there's a lot of sort of future planning involved.
Correct.
Going into it. Building relationships with lenders is something else I heard you touch on.
Yeah.
And then also, sticking to what you know, in a sense of, in your case, acquiring other smaller mills in similar manufacturing areas.
Yeah.
That way, I guess the credibility from Brink can really shine through in that term. So
Right.
that's a really great note for any entrepreneur that's thinking about
Sure.
expanding their business, for sure. Now, everyone has in their entrepreneurial journey their proudest moment, but also their absolute hair puller moment. Why don't we start with the proudest moment first through your whole journey?
The proudest moment likely is to see, our companies doing well, that, we being recognized for some of the things that we are doing. The other part is giving back to the community. And I like to be, as part of my culture, being part of the community in British Columbia and giving back to us is very, very important.
Absolutely, yeah. And how about your most stressful moment as an entrepreneur?
Well, during the times that I've been in business, and it's all in the book, there probably were 3 or 4 times that I had to virtually start all over again from the bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
No, fair
but
enough.
never give up. It made me stronger, and that's what it always does. For some people, they are reluctant and fearful about failure. And that's understandable. So it's not something that you enjoy, but what it does do, it makes you stronger.
Yeah.
And that tests an individual. A lot of people think that they think that entrepreneurship means you're preoccupied with planning holidays and bringing money to the bank. There's more to it than that.
Definitely.
So.
Definitely. And how about one piece of advice that you wish, John back in, I guess 1975 would have really liked to hear at the start of their entrepreneurial journey? Something you could share with our audience, our first timers.
What I liked his advice is, most of the advice that, that there were not too many believers in what I was doing.
Right.
And encouragement, that would have been helpful.
Yeah.
And I think with most entrepreneurs now, but I always try to do, get close to people that are successful. Or a lot of people say, well, that's difficult because these people, I'm not talking about me, are important. They probably don't have time for us. It's not so. That most entrepreneurs that are successful like to share that with others. And
Right.
as you likely know, I've been a guest at lecturing at the MBA classes, and obviously I'm very involved with the college. I've always been very involved with UNBC.
Yeah.
So and now we are working on a center of excellence, actually. That is more or less a picture of BCIT of Northern British Columbia.
Yeah.
And we've been working on that for the last 3-4 years. And, so those things are all very important to me,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we talked a little bit about the philanthropy behind Brink Group, and I'd love for you to maybe elaborate a little more on sort of what Brink has done over these years in the northern region, particularly Prince George and the surrounding communities.
Yeah, obviously we've been, very involved, with UNBC for one. I happened to be way back in the early 80s, 83. I was a writing president of one of the incumbent governments that was contemplating funding a university. And as we all know, it was an immense effort on the part of many people. 16,000 signed, paid $5, and became part of the push behind the UNBC. And then the same as many people that did the circuit of speaking to groups, because it's a northern BC university, not only Prince George. And then and my role was quite involved in on the political side because I was the writing president of the incumbent government. It was a major battle because money, at the end of the day, it had to be funded by the provincial government, and that's a battle all on its own. And I always remember we had busloads of people going to then there was an AGM of the incumbent government in Penticton, and we went down there with buttons and signs and so it did get done, and then I think it was 1989 that the funding of UNBC was then approved, and then obviously it was opened by the Queen August the 18th, 1994, I think. And and look now what it is, So
Absolutely.
And look at what it will be, because it's just the beginning.
Yeah.
And that can be so much more. So I think that, but to me, was very, very exciting. And obviously, I got the honor of receiving an honorary doctorate's award on May the 19th, 2019. May 31st, 2019. And then the other one to me, which is very close to me, is the College of New Caledonia. I've been very involved there, and obviously the John Brink Trades and Technology Center, was a big part of that, but also the ongoing. So those are structural pieces that are critical for making Northern BC, what it should be. And I always call it the other half of the province, and I'd say to my peers down south, that 80% of the GDP in British Columbia comes from Northern BC. And then I always say, hey guys, don't forget it. That's where it comes from. And so, but I've seen in Prince George and the Prince George has been well managed by, most of the times by mayor and council, and going through some tough times in terms of the COVID and all the other things relating to it, but have stayed the course and have made some major changes to the city and making it more attractive for investment, entrepreneurship. And just across from the building where we are sitting today, we're building a new swimming pool. So now Prince George has become a community where I came here in 1965. It was a boomtown.
Yeah.
So the main dialogue was, when did you get here and when are you leaving?
Right.
Now it has become much more. There is nothing like it, like Northern BC and the region, and especially in keeping in mind COVID and all the lakes that we got around here. There is no place more beautiful than where we are in Northern BC.
Exactly. Like thank you again for all your work with the university. Obviously, I wouldn't be here today without that.
Yeah.
And you're so right about the opportunities that things like creating a university and investing in the college have provided the community. I myself, may not have moved to Prince George without the school being here.
So much so, Brandon, because, I get so excited about that because the other day we had a boardroom meeting, and I think there were about 8 people around the boardroom table. And when I was sitting there and saying to these guys, you know something? Every single one of these persons is an alumni of UNBC, including me. And so the point is that when we build these organizations, these institutions, they will stay here in a lot of cases and see the opportunity here. And as the North grows and develops in Prince George, not only Prince George, the other communities around us in the satellites will benefit from all of that as well. And I think there's huge opportunity there. And I must compliment the Prince George mayor and council for the leadership they took during some difficult periods when the fires were there in 2018, 2019, and there were crises. How they worked together with the region, So, but I'm very excited about looking forward about UNBC and CNC. Yeah.
That's great. Last piece for the philanthropy side. I think it's very important for small businesses to try to give back to their community in some way. Now, it can be difficult, but did you have any sort of input on how a small business can take part in helping their community, whether it's donations or time or however they can help their community?
All of that, right? So it doesn't have to be a lot of money,
Right.
like even doing, although we do a lot now, but, there were periods where I didn't have much money, but I always felt like being involved in person or helping or doing whatever we could do. And if the amount of money was not too much, but just being there in a lot of cases was important. And, so the whole idea of giving back, is for me part of my culture. I would hope that other people look at it in the same way. We live in such a beautiful country, in such a beautiful province, in such a beautiful region. And even more today, Brandon, than ever, and because of my background going through the war years and the occupation and all the things, I look at the Ukraine and, it just really, really troubles me. In fact, if you ever drive by Brink, we have a flag hanging on our flag post from the Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up our show today. Thank you again so much, John, for coming on with all of your insight from the Brink Group and just your incredible entrepreneurial journey from Holland to Canada. If I can just ask you to close out the show with one more piece of wisdom that you can share with our young entrepreneurs.
First and foremost, find your passion, and by doing that, look around and different opportunities. Talk to entrepreneurs. They enjoy talking to aspiring entrepreneurs in groups or in other settings individually. If you have ideas, feel free to call an entrepreneur in an appropriate way, and look if they have time to look at something that you may have. That to me has been the most valuable, that I always looked at what makes this person successful in business and why. And most entrepreneurs are willing to give back and help wherever they can. And then, then the other one that I must say is read my book, because it tells you, my book is not about, it's an autobiography. It's not about hoorah, hoorah, John. It's about, with all the adversity and all the challenges and all the way staying the course, how come that he succeeded? What made him do that? And then, maybe I can send, you go to johnabrink.com, and there is an audio portion. And for those that are challenged a little bit and don't have much money, send me a note. I'll sign the book for you and get it for free. That's the one. And then the other thing that I should say is that you will see that the next book, there's another book coming out July the 8th. And you may wonder what the title of the book is. It is ADHD Unlocked. I'm the perfect example of ADHD. I discovered it through coincidence of reading a book, and all of a sudden driven by distraction, and I said, oh my God, that's me. But there was stigma involved then. And so I wrote in the book in Dutch. Now finally I know who I am, but it has become now, in my opinion, a superpower. And it gives that person that is blessed with ADHD immense opportunity to explore it and become successful. A lot of entrepreneurs are ADHD. It's not a requirement, but regardless. And again, you can read about that in my book. And the other one, ADHD Unlocked, is another one that talks about that. But another thing that it shows, Brandon, is that I love to be busy. I do a lot of stuff. I want to write a book every year and do all the other things. But I encourage entrepreneurship because although it is a challenge a lot of times, stay the course, never give up. Try to talk to people that are successful and find out what made them tick. Why did they do what they did do? And encourage those, the university or wherever you are, the college, or any of the people that are inspiring or have people involved in their classes that are entrepreneurial. Invite some entrepreneurs. Ask them to do a presentation. Ask them questions and do all those kind of things. So that's, as you can see, I'm very excited even now. Every day that I get up, to me it's a challenge, and I love it.